of good or evil work. A Krishna conscious person has no attachment for the result, but acts on behalf of Krishna alone. He engages in all kinds of activities, but is completely non-attached. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so this verse says, therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activity, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. Okay, so this principle, acting as a matter of duty, is very important in Krishna consciousness. Most people, almost everybody, works for their own self-interest. And therefore, there is what you would call competition, competitiveness. And that competitiveness is sometimes very, very vicious in the material world. It can be on private level between two people, or it can be on the the universal level between countries. But the main point here is that if one acts without being attached to the fruits of activities, simply acting out of duty, without the concept of attachment, one attains the supreme. It's a very profound statement. Acting as a matter of duty rather than acting as a matter of personal aggrandizement or personal benefit is a big difference. So almost everybody acts for their own benefit. However, in spiritual life, one acts without attachment to the fruits of the activity, but as a matter of duty, in order to please Krishna and, of course, the spiritual master. If Krishna is pleased, then everyone will be pleased. If Krishna is not pleased, then no one will be pleased. So how do we know? How do we know if Krishna is pleased by our actions? We know by the teaching of the spiritual master, the bona fide spiritual master. So one has to have a bona fide spiritual master, and to follow the instructions of the spiritual master is the actual purpose of the disciple, so that the disciple can make genuine spiritual advancement and avoid making so many different mistakes. Many people in life make many different mistakes. Sometimes they perform acts not even knowing that they're mistakes, and that causes a lot of suffering. Therefore, it's absolutely necessary to have a bona fide spiritual master who is in the bona fide spiritual parampara, and to constantly be in touch with the bona fide spiritual master, so that we can ask questions, we can get the questions answered, and therefore stay on the right path to go back to the spiritual world. If we avoid the good counsel or good, let's say, advice of a bona fide spiritual master, and we're trying to figure everything out on our own, it's for sure that we'll make many mistakes. Therefore, it's easier to surrender to a bona fide spiritual master or spiritual masters, take their advice, and avoid so many different mistakes that we could make acting independently. Most people want to act independently, not knowing that by acting under the tutelage or the advice of bona fide spiritual masters, one can avoid making many, many mistakes. In other words, having a much happier experience in life because one is getting the proper advice. That's why it says here, uh, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. All right, so what is acting as a matter of duty? Duty means these are what you would call uh, bona fide advice, uh, by which one can avoid making many mistakes. And uh, on the other hand, getting good advice and making and performing activities that are pleasing to Krishna. The ultimate purpose of a human being is to please the Lord and to follow the instructions of the Lord. That way, you avoid 99.9% problems in life. It's much easier to follow the rules than to break the rules. When you break the rules, you become more and more entangled in the cycle of birth and death. If you follow the rules correctly, you avoid most problems in life. Therefore, you have a very peaceful life, and you're able to make the right decisions and avoid so many difficulties that other people experience because of their lack of good advice. So that is uh, the mercy of a pure devotee who will give good advice by which the shishya or the disciple can avoid 99.9% of problems in life. And if there are problems, they can quickly get advice how to overcome those problems because they're in contact with pure devotees. And this is very important in order to make spiritual advancement. The wheel was invented many, many centuries ago. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel every millennium. Uh, we just have to be educated and take the advantage of uh, previous pure devotees. And we don't have to uh, experience in our own way. We can have vicarious experience, which means you learn from the example of others. That's the best way to learn. And others meaning pure devotees. So, therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. The purport says the supreme is the personality of Godhead for the devotees and liberation for the impersonalists. A person, therefore, acting for Krishna or in Krishna consciousness under the proper guidance and without attachment to the result of the work is certainly making progress toward the supreme goal of life. Arjuna is told that he should fight in the battle of Kurukshetra for the interest of Krishna, because Krishna wanted him to fight. To be a good man or a nonviolent man is a personal attachment. But to act on behalf of the Supreme is to act without attachment for the results. That is perfect action of the highest degree, recommended by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Well, one example would be Gandhi. Gandhi was, in some ways, a very good person, but he made a lot of mistakes. Why did he make so many mistakes? It's because he did not have a bona fide spiritual master. That is the mistake that most people make in their life. So what happened to Gandhi? He was told not to go to a certain program. There was danger that he might be assassinated. But he didn't listen to that good advice. He went and got assassinated, and he was assassinated. In life, we should learn to always take advice from bona fide persons or devotees to avoid uh, making unnecessary mistakes. So, when a person is capable of accepting good advice, that means they're going to be uh, very successful in this lifetime. Now, how do you gauge or how do you understand if someone's successful? Well, because they are preparing themselves to go back to Godhead. And therefore, they're not interested in mundane thoughts and activities. They're keeping their mind always focused on Shastric evidences, good association, and the culture of taking advice from bona fide devotees. That means that someone is on the fast track to go back to Godhead. And of course, being engaged in bona fide devotional service. How is service bona fide? Well, it's under the uh, superintendence of bona fide acharyas. And then your service has a very great chance of being bona fide. Okay, so it says Vedic rituals like prescribed sacrifices are performed for purification of impious activities that were performed in the field of sense gratification. But action in Krishna consciousness is transcendental to the reactions of good or evil work. A Krishna conscious person has no attachment for the result, but acts on behalf of Krishna alone. He engages in all kinds of activities, but is completely non-attached. Okay, so it looks like there's a difference between Vedic rituals, like prescribed sacrifices, are performed for purification of impious activities that were performed in the field of sense gratification. But action in Krishna consciousness is transcendental to the reactions of good or evil works. A Krishna conscious person has no attachment for the result but acts on behalf of Krishna alone. He engages in all kinds of activities but is completely non-attached. If we can understand just this last paragraph of the purport, then we can understand what is the difference between Srila Prabhupada and the Vaishnava Acharyas and all the other so-called pundits in the world. So first of all, to understand the purpose of the Vedic rituals is very important. Otherwise, we can mechanically or perfunctorily follow them and not make any spiritual advancements. The whole purpose of Vedic rituals are to be purified of impious activities that were performed in the field of sense gratification. In other words, give up all activities of sense gratification and take up all activities that are pleasing to Krishna and following the instruction of bona fide devotees. Without the instruction of bona fide devotees, it is very easy to make mistakes. That's why normally a shishya or disciple should always get the validation of the guru before making any major decisions in their life. That is the whole purpose of having guru. The bona fide guru is not going to mislead you. The bona fide guru will show you where his advice is actually validated by Vedic knowledge. So if the guru says, well, you should do this, and you say, well, can you show me in Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam that what you're asking me to do is bona fide? Well, that is a bona fide question that a disciple should ask. One should not blindly accept a guru. But once one has followed the instructions of a guru for a long time, and they've always been correctly, let's say, advised, then there should not be any hesitation of following the guru's instructions. So the guru is vetting the disciple, and the disciple is vetting the guru. But at a certain point, it's not necessary to vet all the time. Just like there was this one man, he was a very prominent Vaishnava, but he was also a very prominent businessman. So when he met Prabhupada, he was using his normal strategy as a businessman to test Srila Prabhupada. what is the normal strategy? The normal strategy of a businessman is to find some foible or some weakness and then take advantage of that person. Uh, so that's what this one devotee was doing with Prabhupada. And because of that, he didn't take, he associated with Prabhupada, but he didn't take initiation. And then Prabhupada left his body. And then the so-called devotee was very, very sad because instead of always trying to find a fault in Prabhupada, he did not take initiation from Prabhupada. And then when Prabhupada left his body, he realized he made a big mistake. Well, he tried to rectify that mistake by taking initiation by one of Prabhupada's disciples. But the point is that if a person is only trying to find a fault, they'll never see the positive things about the person that they're vetting. They're only looking for a fault. And why are they looking for a fault? Well, if they can find some fault, then they can walk away from that person or guru or whatever. So this person, who was a very prominent businessman and Vaishnava, he was always trying to find some weakness in Prabhupada or maybe a fault, and he never found it. And because he was always looking for that, because that's what they do in business. In business, you always try and find the weakness of someone you're engaging in business with to take advantage of them. But with Prabhupada, he never found any weakness. But because of he was always looking for a weakness in Prabhupada or some shortcoming in Prabhupada, he never surrendered to Prabhupada. And then he realized he had made a big mistake. Actually, I remember when I first came into contact with devotees, they were always talking about Prabhupada and reading Bhagavad Gita with Prabhupada's, and purports and so forth. I became convinced that Prabhupada is a pure devotee, and that I should surrender to him without any hesitation, which is what I did. I was not trying to find any fault in Prabhupada because just by reading the purports of Prabhupada, I realized that he was a pure devotee. And there were no mistakes in what he was doing or what he was writing. So, but I was not looking for faults in the guru. I was trying to understand the instruction given by the guru. And therefore, I took initiation, and 60 years later, I'm more convinced than ever that I made the right decision. But if my only purpose was to find a fault with Srila Prabhupada so that I could walk away from Krishna consciousness, I would have never taken initiation, and I would be looking year after year to find a mistake in Prabhupada. At a certain point, we have to stop trying to find mistakes in a pure devotee and focus more on surrendering completely into the merciful teachings of the guru, bona fide guru. So it says here, the Supreme is the personality of Godhead for the devotees and liberation for the impersonalists. So there's a major difference between the impersonalists and the devotees. A devotee is not interested in liberation. I remember many, many years ago, one devotee wanted to get initiated. So I told him, you write a letter to send to Prabhupada. But before you send it, I want to read what you write. So he wrote a letter in which he said, dear Srila Prabhupada, my real desire is to be liberated in this lifetime. He said something like that. So when he gave me, you know, uh, the letter that he wrote, I told him, you can't send this letter. He said, why not? I said, if you send this letter, then Prabhupada will be convinced that I'm not teaching you properly. Well, he was a little bit surprised when I said that. I said, look, the purpose of following Srila Prabhupada is not to be liberated. Liberation is also a material desire. The real purpose is to be always engaged in devotional service, whether it's in this world or in the next world. It's not to be liberated. Liberation or mukti is a material desire, but constant engagement in pure devotional service is transcendental. And that service can be performed in the material world, or it can be performed in the spiritual world. So that the devotee had to rewrite his letter. I told him, if you send this letter to Prabhupada, he will know right away that I'm not teaching you correctly what Krishna consciousness is. So he had to rewrite his letter. So in this purport, it says, to be a good man or a nonviolent man is a personal attachment, but to act on behalf of the Supreme is to act without attachment for the result. That is perfect action of the highest degree, recommended by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Okay, so these two lines of or sentences are enough to educate us to become genuine devotees. So let me read it again. To be a good man or a nonviolent man is a personal attachment, but to act on behalf of the Supreme is to act without attachment for the result. That is perfect action of the highest degree, recommended by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. This is what we have to learn. We're not here to become famous or to become popular, etc. We're here to learn how to surrender completely to Radha and Krishna and always be engaged in their service without any material motive. Everything depends on what our motive is. So if we have a motive, that means that our activity is going to be tainted or our activity is going to be misdirected. But if our only purpose is to please Krishna and Prabhupada and the devotees, then that is no longer a material motive. It becomes spiritual. Let's say spiritual. Um, what you would call it, it's a spiritual benefit. So why use the word benefit? Because not only the the devotee is benefited, but anyone who comes in contact with the devotee is also benefited. That's the whole purpose of preaching. We don't preach simply by words, we preach by actions. And if our actions are devoid of selfish activities, in other words, all our actions are meant to please Prabhupada and Krishna according to the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness, then we're free of karma. But if we have a purpose to attain by our actions, then we get tied up in the reactive karma because of our misplaced, let's say, priority. We should not have misplaced priorities or mixed priorities, some Krishna consciousness and some personal motives. No, our only purpose should be to surrender completely to Guru and Krishna and be engaged always in pure devotional service. This is what Prabhupada is teaching us. You cannot teach something like this unless you actually really surrender to Guru and Krishna. So this whole surrendering process is actually a beautiful thing. So the more you're surrendered to the Lord, not only you're happy, but you understand that this is the only way that you can approach the Lord and the devotees with sincere, let's say, culture of Krishna consciousness. So culture is how people do things. So in Krishna consciousness, we have special ways of doing things. Other people with different culture have other ways of doing things. But in Krishna consciousness, we have specific ways of doing things, like chanting Hare Krishna, like purifying our heart of all material desires, and so forth. There's so many things that we do that are different than what you would call materialistic people do. So here it says, to be a good man or a nonviolent man is a personal attachment. But to act on behalf of the Supreme is to act without attachment for the result. That is perfect action of the highest degree, recommended by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Okay, so that's our takeaway tonight. Uh, we don't necessarily need to be a so-called good man or a non-violent man, because there's a let's say something that we want from that. But to act on behalf of Krishna is to act without attachment for the result. That is perfect action of the highest degree, recommended by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. In other words, before we perform some action, we should ask ourselves, is this something that would be pleasing to Prabhupada and Krishna? And if we can't say yes, then we shouldn't do it. If we can't figure out whether it's yes or no, then we have to get advice from more advanced devotees. But definitely we should not perform any action knowing well that it's not acceptable by Guru and Krishna. That would be a big mistake in our life. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there. Are there any questions on this verse, text 19? It says, therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. So duty means it's something that you cannot avoid. You must do it. And do what? Surrender to the Lord and act without any material attachments or attachment to the fruits of activity. You have to have a pure purpose, and that is to please the Guru and Krishna by all your activities, not to please yourself. Pleasing Krishna is the best pleasing you can do to yourself. But just to please yourself and avoid pleasing Krishna, that's the worst thing. Okay, are there any questions anyone would like to ask or comments?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes. Go ahead, Mother.
Hare Bol. Maharaj, I have a question regarding this verse. Like, how easy is it to apply this principle in workplace as well? Like, not attaching to the fruits of the activity. Like, is it really possible? Uh, is what I'm thinking. I'm deliberating on this.
Well, that's a good question. Very good question. A devotee is not attached to the result for himself. He may be attached to pleasing the Lord, but he's not attached to pleasing himself. Most people act to please themselves. Very few people act to please Krishna. So, how do you please Krishna? By following his instructions under the superintendence of genuine gurus. Then you have a good, let's say, possibility of pleasing Krishna. If you want to please yourself, you'll just run into many problems. Uh, but if you want to please Krishna and you're sincere about it, then Krishna will help you in every way to uh, navigate yourself through all the different situations in this life without becoming victimized by Maya. Maya's victimization means forgetfulness of Krishna. But when you are seriously following the regulative principles, regularly hearing classes, participating actively in the classes by asking questions and understanding uh, things or Krishna conscious knowledge, uh, it's an exciting experience. You can learn something new every day in Krishna consciousness. And at the same time, there will be repetition. So you don't forget what you learned previously, also. That's why there's repetition all the time, because it's very easy to learn something and then forget it. But if there's always repetition going on, as well as learning something new, then you become eventually educated, and it's not artificial because you will never forget what you've learned. However, if it's just artificial learning, pass a test or something like that, without really understanding things profoundly, that's very superficial, and you don't really learn things. How do we know that? Well, you'll still continue to make mistakes. The same mistakes you made 20 years ago, you'll still be making the same mistakes 20 years later. So, therefore, the real learning process is to completely surrender to Krishna and Guru, regularly hear the lectures every day, and be involved in the lectures by asking questions, and writing papers also. In other words, doing homework. It's very good to have homework. I haven't given any recently, but I should start doing it, because once you do homework after having a class, then you do some homework, and then you present your homework, you have a much better chance of learning, or at least remembering what you learned. So, starting tomorrow, I will start giving out homework. Not that it's going to overwhelm you, but just to be able to not simply hear, which is very important, but also to uh, write things down, and then keep a journal, and be able to look at your notes of what you learned a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, or a month ago, or a year ago. So that type of remembrance is very important. Okay, so any other questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the wonderful lecture. I'm still not able to understand how to apply this this instruction properly in the practical life. For example, let's say, for example, I'm looking for a job, and I try very hard to find a job, and I prepare for it very well, and I give interviews, and my interviews also went very well. But let's say if I don't get the job, I did not make it through, how to take that failure, how to take that failure in the right sense? Like how can I here, how can I pacify myself that it is for the Krishna pleasure? Thank you, Maharaj.
Well, there's a big difference between trying to get a job and surrendering to Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in the material world, finding a job, well, sometimes you'll be successful, and sometimes you'll not be successful. So that just proves that finding a job is not the criterion of success. Uh, the criterion of success is whether you're Krishna conscious or not. So you shouldn't worry if you don't get a job right away, or you lose a job. You shouldn't worry about those things. You should worry rather about strictly following the principles of Krishna consciousness and having complete faith and love for Krishna. Then Krishna is going to help you in every way, including getting a job.
Mm-hmm.
When we become devastated because we lose a job, and now we're looking for a job, we're not getting it, that takes your mind off of Krishna,
Mm-hmm.
isn't it?
Yes, yes, Maharaj.
So if we just have complete faith in Krishna, and not be disturbed by losing the job, and not be defeated by looking for a job for a long time, but having complete faith in Krishna and practicing Krishna consciousness without any hiatus, then you'll see Krishna will help you. Maya is very interesting. Maya will do everything to make you forget Krishna. So when you're overwhelmed by the fact that you lost your job, and now you're overwhelmed by the fact that you're looking for a job and you're not getting one, your mind has been taken away completely from Krishna. And now you're under the control of Maya. But if you, on the other hand, not be discouraged because you lost your job, not be discouraged because you put 50 different uh, attempts to get a job and failed every time. You should never be discouraged by those things. You should just continue doing your duty, which is chanting Hare Krishna and following the regulative principles, eating only prasadam and so forth. And you can continue looking for a job, or you can come to the conclusion, why am I looking for a job? Why don't I start my own business?
Mhm.
You see, so okay, it's not easy to start your own business, but you can do it. There's so many things that you can do. Like, for example, you can uh, work for free, like some kind of like the Salvation Army or something like that. And over time, the Salvation Army can see you're such good, sincere worker. They'll hire you. But you started by working for free. Anyway, the main point is not to forget Krishna by being overwhelmed by losing a job or being very frustrated but not being able to find a new job right away. Yeah, that might cause different problems, but you should have complete faith in Krishna that he's going to help you in all circumstances. Therefore, you strictly follow the principles of Krishna consciousness and you honestly try to find another job. But you see, this finding a job, it puts you in a very different, let's say, um, mindset. If you say, well, look, I have certain talents, and maybe I can use these talents now to start uh, a different career. See? So instead of looking for a job, you might start a little home business on your own, and uh, and try and you know uh, make that a success. But like in my life, I never worked for anyone. I always had my own businesses. Why? Because I didn't want to work for anybody else. Because then you work and you give all your uh, talents to help the boss make money and so forth, and all of a sudden you lose your job after working so hard trying to be a loyal worker in that company. So it's better to just have your own company or your own job and not depend on somebody else. So there are different ways of making a living, but it should be an honest living, whether you're working for someone else or whether you're working individually, and not be discouraged by the ups and downs. There's always going to be ups and downs in the material world. That's just the nature of the material world. But that is Maya, actually. Therefore, you should have complete faith in Krishna and work honestly and not be worried. Even if you lose your job, you will find another job or you'll start your own little business to make a living. So don't be worried.
Thank you so much,
People,
Maharaj.
yeah, people who panic, they create their own miseries. There's no reason to panic. You have a good education, you're honest, And on top of all that, you're Krishna conscious. So in some wonderful, mysterious way, Krishna is going to protect you. That should be our absolute faith. Therefore, everything is going to work out, even in the most difficult situations. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, very nice explanation. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hare Krishna. So we will end the session if there are no more questions, and we'll see you in the morning.
Okay. What is it? 11 hours from now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hari Bol. Thank you very much. All